Hi weaving friends, it's been a little while since I've done a vloggy kind of update with you, and so I thought it was high time that I let you know what I've been up to and share a few new things with you. I have been on a little bit of a break recently. I've been dealing with a bit of personal stuff that hasn't been so much fun, but I'm hopefully starting to get past all of that, starting to do little bits again and just do what I can when I can. Last week I turned 47 and I'm feeling pretty good about that. We're starting to get a little bit more sunshine. It's starting to feel a little bit more like spring here, and that's always a really nice time of year. So the first thing that I was going to chat about is what's been happening over at the weaving school. Last month was a pretty big month and there were a lot of things happening, and I released a lot of new things, which probably contributed to the personal issues that I've been having. I did talk about a few months ago now, quite a few months ago, about burnout, creator burnout, and I've got a video about that and I'll link to that down below. And perhaps I will talk more about that in the future, but not right now. It just doesn't feel like the right time. Anyway, so back to what I was saying about the weaving school. So last month I released the shadow weave class, and that is a rigid heddle class, and within that class I included options for weaving with 2 heddles or weaving with 3 heddles, providing those options. And then just last week in the weaving school we had the warp weft colour workshop, which is a really popular workshop. I ran it once last year, and so I decided to run it again this year at a similar time, and a lot of people enrolled in that and went through that workshop and really enjoyed it, so that is great. I'll consider running that again next year, maybe, depending on the amount of interest. Also last month I released 2 new patterns for my Etsy shop. One was a houndstooth scarf, and that is a rigid heddle project aimed at beginners, and it's also a really quick scarf. It's actually called the weekend scarf because it can be woven and it can be warped and woven within a weekend. It uses quite a chunky yarn and it's a really quick weave. So that's a fun one for either beginners, or if you want to make a gift really quickly, or you just want a simple, fast project. And then I also released my first knitting machine pattern, which was the triangle shawl. Of course, I'll leave links to those down below as well. Speaking of Etsy patterns, today I am wearing my aquamarine scarf, and this is part of a pattern that has actually 2 patterns included, 2 scarves. There's the close-up for you. You can see the lovely sheen on that. And that is the cityscape scarf along with the aquamarine scarf, and this is actually a table loom project. Of course you can do it on a floor loom as well. That's another pattern that I have in my Etsy shop. I am also working on my next Etsy shop pattern. I'm going to talk about that a little bit afterwards, and just show you some of the colours that I'm using for that. During the week I posted on social media about my new end feed shuttle that I bought as a birthday present to myself, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit in today's video because a lot of people were interested in, like, what is the difference between a regular boat shuttle and an end feed shuttle. So today I'm going to compare my boat shuttle to my new shuttle and just give you a little bit of an overview of how they're different. So here I have my regular boat shuttle. This is my Ashford boat shuttle that I've used for years and years with my floor loom. And this is my new end feed shuttle by Shacked. And they are, the end feed shuttle's a little bit longer than the boat shuttle. So first I'll talk about how the boat shuttle works. The boat shuttle operates using these bobbins, plastic bobbins. You can also make your own bobbins, and some people use cardboard ones. There's a bunch of different things you can do there. And basically you use a bobbin winder, or you can use an electric drill to wind the thread on, and you wind just back and forth under a bit of tension until you've got this nicely, fairly evenly wound bobbin. And then you can just pop that on the prong in the middle, and then the end of the thread feeds through the side, and then that just locks into place. And then as you're weaving, which I'll actually show on the loom in a moment, the thread feeds out of the middle and the bobbin turns. Okay, very simple, very nice. Now with the end feed shuttle, with the new one that I've just bought, it doesn't have a bobbin, instead it has a pern. It's called a pern, P-I-R-N. And they can look a bunch of different ways too. I bought these plastic ones to fit this actual shuttle. So I've got a pern that is partly wound here, but I've been using this one, so it's mostly finished. But I do have a little bit of thread left on the end. And you don't wind a pern in the same way that you wind a bobbin. The pern, you start at the thick end and you don't go right to the end. And you sort of wind it in increments. So instead of winding all the way across and then all the way back and over to build up your thread that way, you wind it in little sections, and then you go back a little bit, and then you wind forward again, and then back a little bit, and again. So you're building up very gradually. Actually, almost the day that I bought this shuttle, that it arrived in the mail, Shaq actually put out a new video on how to wind one of these. How handy is that? So I'll link to that down below if you want to see how this is actually wound. So okay, once you've wound your pern, it also has this central prong, but it doesn't go all the way across like the boat shuttle does. And so you just push that up, and then your pern fits on the end. You can pop that down. And then instead of having a gap here, your thread goes through, there's a little tensioner here at the end, little metal prongs, and they've got a center, and it's through the center of those that you put your thread. You just kind of hold it there. And then it's got this little curve that comes out the front. And so you just pull the thread down. It goes through the tensioner, like that, and then it goes out the front, and then you can pull it over, and it rests between these other couple of metal prongs at the front. It kind of seems complicated. It's really not. It's really not. And it came with a little booklet that's just really easy to follow. It lays it all out for you. And then so you're going through this tensioner, and what you can do is you can start weaving with this, and if you find, say you find at the edges that you have some loops coming off at the edges as you're weaving, then that means that your tension's too loose. So then you can bring in this little hex wrench, and you can actually tension this to be a little bit tighter. Or let's say that your edge threads your weft threads are pulling in too much at the edges. Then likewise, you can come in with the wrench again and loosen it up a little bit if it's too tight. What I did is I just started weaving with it. I just wound my first pern, started weaving with it just to see how it would go, and the tension's perfect, so I haven't had to adjust that at all. So this is my countermarch loom, and I had been using the Ashford boat shuttle, just the regular boat shuttle, on this loom, and I was feeling like there had to be a better way, because I've got this almost fully warped, and it's a 60-inch, 150 centimeter width warp, and it's quite a stretch. And this boat shuttle is quite light, and it's also very, very tapered at the edges. So I've been using this on my David floor loom for years and years, and it's been really, really good. But for this loom, for the extra width, I'd never woven at such a wide width before. And so I've been having problems with this shuttle diving between threads or skipping threads. And also it's just really hard to throw it all the way to the other side. And then, because I have to shuffle across on the bench and then shuffle back this way, it's that wide. And yeah, I was just getting a lot of skipped threads. And so that was one reason that I wanted to try a different shuttle. And I saw a lot of people online said, try an end feed shuttle. Okay, so I'm going to just show you how this one goes normally, how I would use this one. And then I can talk about the differences between the two shuttles. So the first difference, just as I start weaving, is with the regular boat shuttle that has the entry point here in the middle, I always feed off a little bit of yarn before I throw the shuttle for each pick. And that's because if I don't feed off the yarn, I find that it gets a bit caught at the edge and draws in too much. So I'm going to throw the first pick. So as you can see, it doesn't go across as far, and I have to be more careful about the way that I'm throwing it so that I don't get that wrong angle and get the skipped threads. So go to one side first. And come back. So as you can see there, it kind of stops at one point, and the bobbin is spinning as you're throwing the shuttle as it's moving, and that can mean that it does kind of stop at some points, and I can tend to get tangles on the bobbin as well. Now that may be down to my winding technique perhaps. There was one shed in particular, and it was this one, the third treadle, where with this shuttle I was just finding every time it would skip threads. It was getting really annoying. It's not this time. That's nice. Okay, so each time I'm winding off a bit of thread so that it doesn't catch as much. And this boat shuttle is very light, as I said, which can be really awesome for not so wider widths, say for a scarf or a towel or something like that. This shuttle just shoots across. It's really, really nice, the lightness of it. Okay, so that's me weaving with that one, so I'm going to cut that now so that I can show you the other one. Oh, another thing that was really good about this shuttle is with that tapered edge, it's really easy to enter into the shed, especially using floating selvages, because you can press down the floating selvage with that nice tapered edge and then just shoot in. That's a little more difficult with this one because it's not quite as tapered at the edge. Now, another thing is that this one is pretty highly lacquered, and so it's quite slippery. The shacked one, the wood's really, really smooth, but it's not as slippery, and that actually works a little bit better for the wider width because it seems to provide a little bit more resistance, and so it just travels a little bit more nicely in more of a straight line. Okay, I'm going to open up the shed. All right, so for this one, when I go into the shed, I don't have to fiddle with the thread at all. Only on the very first pick, so that I have enough of a tail. You see how that goes right to the other side? I didn't have enough of a tail. I've just got to pull that out. Just because I'm entering the shed for the first time with this new thread. Okay, so yeah, this travels across this warp so nicely. I actually have to be careful not to shoot it out the other side and onto the floor. And also the heavier weight and the blunter, slightly blunter nose seems to just not skip the threads in the same way that the other shuttle was. This is that trouble shed that I was having, but I don't have any trouble with it with this shuttle. And I don't pull out extra thread before I go in, and I don't mess with the edges at all. That just all works itself out with this shuttle. And it's just all very smooth. It's also very quiet because this pern, it doesn't turn like the bobbin does. I'm still getting practice with this new bobbin, with this new shuttle, but it's just made the whole thing much nicer so far. Next, I'm going to show you one of my knitting machine fails, one of many of my knitting machine fails. What I've wanted to do for a long time is do like a Mobius wrap, a wrap that goes around the shoulders and then twists at the front, and I guess you call it a shrug as well, that you just put on, so it's a circle but with a twist. You put it on and, you know, just kind of, it hugs your body. That was my vision. And so I did what I thought were some fairly decent calculations, and then I measured everything that on the machine, and then finally I took it off. Oh, and by the way, I started this 4 times before realizing that I needed to rethread and retension my yarn. That was causing issues at the edges, causing loops at the edges. It was really a simple fix, but it took me 4 times of restarting it to realize that that was the problem. And so I knit this lovely piece. It's very, very pretty colors. I've got 3 different colors of merino in that. And it's really soft and really stretchy and, you know, just lovely and light. Anyway, so that was supposed to be the length to wrap around the back of my shoulders and right around my front with a twist. How could I possibly get it so wrong, you ask? I'm not really sure. I guess it's just lack of experience of measurements on the actual knitting machine. And also I didn't think about something important. I was knitting from this top down, and I wanted my shawl to go sideways, and there's more stretch widthways than there is lengthways. So if my shawl is going to go lengthways, then I didn't really allow for the fact that there'd be less stretch that way than there would widthways. Because the machine, of course, it's only a certain length, so it wasn't long enough to get the length that I need to have it go widthways, if that makes sense. So what I ended up with was a very nice piece of fabric that's not really long enough to do very much with. And I also realized that I needed to use a looser tension with this one, just slightly looser tension, so it was a little more stretchy. Anyway, I guess it was a good experiment, and like I always say, nothing's really a fail, because everything that doesn't work out the way you wanted it to, it teaches you something. It teaches you what not to do next time, what you need to do differently, how you need to think differently about the piece, and all of that good stuff. And also something else good did come out of this. I thought when I was holding it up and looking at it in the mirror, hang on, I've got to go back a little bit. I thought this would make a really nice top if I had a couple of pieces. So one at the front, and that would kind of stretch around. Of course, I can't really put it over the top of all these loose clothes that I have on, but if you can envision that being the front of a top and then having a back piece and some sleeves, well, I'm not quite advanced enough on the knitting machine to be able to put garments together really successfully yet. But for the future, that could be something really nice. It's something I'd like to do. And at the very least, I've been able to test out these colours and see that I really like them. Another thing that I've been doing a lot of is crochet. Now, if you follow me on social media, you've probably already heard this story, but for those who don't, I'll retell. The story is that the granny square has always been my nemesis. When a very long time ago, probably 20 years ago, I went to a class, and it was a granny square crochet class. And by the end of the class, I was the only one who was not able to crochet a granny square, and I was completely lost and I didn't understand it at all. And I just couldn't imagine how these other ladies in the class had managed to finish these granny squares within, you know, a couple of hours or whatever the class was, an hour and a half. And I was just kind of a bit devastated by that. I've always remembered it. And so I've always avoided the idea of crocheting granny squares since then, because it just seemed too hard. But then I saw a YouTube video by Erica Arndt, and I watched her video and I thought, I'm just going to give that a go. And it took me a few goes, but it didn't take a lot of time until I was crocheting granny squares, just like that. Something I thought I'd never be able to accomplish. And it was just having someone show it in the right way, I think. And being able to pause the video, go through the steps, and then go through the next steps and the next steps. And also just realizing that the granny square is actually really simple, and it's just a lot of repetition. And I never realized that before. It just seemed so difficult to me. So what I'm doing is I'm doing all of these different colored granny squares, a lot of different colors, but harmonious colors, and I'm bordering them all in this gray. So whatever colors I use in the middle, I'm bordering the gray. So how many rounds am I doing? I'm doing the central, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds after that. So I guess technically that's 5 rounds, isn't it? And I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with all of these squares yet. They're growing by the day. And they're very pretty. They're just very pretty to look at. Some of these I've blocked and some I haven't. I did ask on the YouTube community whether I should block them or not, or when I should block them, like whether I should block them after they're joined or whatever. And a lot of you advised for me to block them before I do anything else with them, which is what I did. So I wove in all the ends. So this is a blocked one, and this is a non-blocked one, and this one has its ends on the back still, but you can see the difference. It's definitely worth blocking them before you go ahead and do anything else with them. Yes, so I thought maybe a cushion for this one, but then when I had them all laid out on the blocking mat, I just couldn't help but think, gee, these would make such a nice blanket. I can just imagine them on one of my girls' beds. And so I think I'm just going to keep crocheting them. I'm enjoying the process. I do it in the evening, sitting with my feet up, relaxing, and I'm just really enjoying being able to do them. And so I'll just keep going with them. I'm using up leftover yarn, so I haven't bought any extra yarn to be able to do this yet, but of course, if I'm going to do a whole blanket, I'll definitely need some extra yarn. I've got about 5 or 6 different color combinations, and so what I'm going to do once I get close to finishing is just lay them all out as though you would for quilt blocks, and just see which combinations work the best. I haven't got a specific arrangement in mind, but I'm looking forward to getting to that stage. I'm not sure how many I'll need to do an entire blanket. I've done about 20 so far, I usually do between 1 and 3 squares a night, and I don't do it every night. It just depends whether I'm tired or not. But yeah, I'm sure I'll need a lot more than 20 squares to complete the blanket. But I'll keep you updated on that. And I appreciate all of your advice. I know that a lot of you are into crochet. You've had so much good advice for me on techniques and trying different things, and some of you have shared patterns with me, and it's just been really nice exploring this as a kind of new separate hobby. And now I'm looking at all of these amazing mandalas and all the different beautiful patterns and color combinations that people do. So there's a lot to potentially explore there in the future. Okay, so I mentioned my next Etsy pattern before, and this is going to actually be a floor loom pattern. I started out by experimenting with it on my rigid heddle Sampleit, and I'm not sure that it would translate well enough into a written pattern because here it is. I don't know if I've shown you this or not. Let's have a look at the pattern. There. Hopefully you can see that a little bit. I know that I filmed a video using this as an example, but I didn't release that video. I've got some videos that I've filmed but haven't released due to the issues that I already mentioned that I just haven't been able to do as much recently. But yeah, so this is on 3 heddles on the Sampleit loom. And so I started sampling that here, and I was very happy with the pattern and how it all looks. But when you're doing 3 heddles, even 2 heddles, 2 heddles is not too hard to write written instructions for, but 3 heddles can be difficult. It translates much better to video, I think, if you can provide video with some written instructions. Otherwise, it's just a little bit tricky. It can just be a little bit tricky to make it really clear. And I like my patterns to be like over delivery in information. I like there to be so much information for it to be so clear that anyone can do it. And I'm not confident that I could do that with this particular pattern. But anyway, you can see the colors that I'm using, and I've got this one on the warping board at the moment. I'm going to be weaving this on my David loom because I still do have a big warp on my countermarch loom. And I'm really liking these colors. It's going to be a twill pattern, but the color arrangements are sort of the key to the effectiveness of the pattern. There's going to be a few different towels. They're going to be kitchen towels, and each one is going to be slightly different. But the idea is that these are going to be really bright and happy colors. So I'm going to be working on that in coming weeks. I'm not sure when that's going to be released. Not giving any deadlines, just going to be working on that quietly behind the scenes. Something that's been bothering me for absolutely ages is that my Mirrix Big Sister Tapestry loom has been sitting bare since we moved to this property, which is over 2 years ago now. I'm really upset with myself that I haven't had the time or taken the time, because I do believe you can make time for things that you really want to do. But I need to make the time, and I need to get past the stumbling blocks that I have around tapestry. I have some serious stumbling blocks around tapestry. It's so silly, but I really do. I've done quite a few tapestry works now, or at least a handful of tapestry works, and I love tapestry. I love the process, but I've got a bit of a block with perfectionism. I've got ideas about what I want to do with tapestry, and I feel like I'm lacking the skills in the artistry side of it. Not the weaving side, because the weaving side is pretty straightforward and I've had a fair bit of practice at that, but the artistry side. So for me, I have in my mind these wonderful tapestries, and they're basically works of art. They're basically paintings with yarn which is what a tapestry is anyway, right? But mine are very good. Like they're top-notch, beautiful artworks, and I don't feel that I'm capable of them. They're in my imagination, but I don't think that I can translate them onto the loom. And so my stumbling block is that I don't want to start something unless it's going to be awesome. Terrible. I know. I've got to get past this and just do it. Just warp it and just start something. I've had a bunch of ideas. I've written down ideas. I've drawn pictures. I don't trust myself to color blend properly. And what I'm doing is something that I always tell other weavers not to do, and that is to not try to start at somebody else's finish. So as an example, I have 3 tapestry books. I've talked about these books before in all different formats. Sometimes I talk about them on my blog. I've talked about them in videos, like just mention them. I'm going to mention them again because I absolutely love all 3 of these tapestry books that I have for different reasons. Each one's different, which is really nice. So Tapestry Weaving by Kristen Glasbrook. This is an awesome beginner's tapestry book, but it's also very inspiring. Then there's Rebecca Mezoff's Art of Tapestry Weaving. This one is so good, so comprehensive, has a lot of technique-based stuff, and has example of other tapestry artists weaving. And then there's Tommy Scanlon, and she's like one of my favorite tapestry artists. I just really love her work. I love, she takes a lot of her inspiration from nature. So you'll see a lot of leaves and natural kind of colours in her work, and she just seems to be such a natural. And again, it's silly of me because she's been doing this a really long time and has had a lot of practice, and she is a tapestry artist, and it's not something that you can just leap into and expect to be able to do perfectly. But I want to be able to just take inspiration from these people rather than feeling like I can't make a proper start because I'm not going to be as good as them. Her colour blending techniques are beautiful, and while I can't show you the inside of the book because that would be issues against copyright, I can show you the front of the book. That's okay. So here's an example of the painting that she did beforehand and the tapestry. Okay, so herein lies my problem. I can't paint like that. Like, I'm not a great artist when it comes to, realistically painting things according to their colour and their shadow. And when you look at her painting, it's really simple, but it's so realistic. And then she translates that into yarn and it looks wonderful. And that's what I want to be able to do. But I don't trust myself to be able to do it. Another thing that I want to do is buy some proper tapestry wool. And this is something that I haven't done before. I've always used whatever wool I have on hand. That works out fine, but from what I understand, from what I've heard, it's really, really worth investing in some very good quality tapestry yarn. Now, we are very blessed here in Australia because we have the Australian Tapestry Workshop in Melbourne, and they sell some of the best quality tapestry yarn. Now, here's where my second fear comes in. I want to be able to get a lot of different colours so that I can experiment with the colour blending. The yarns are very expensive, and so if you were to, and they've got so many different colours, like the colour range is absolutely amazing. So if I was to buy a huge range of colours, that would be quite an investment, and then I just don't know how I'm going to go with them anyway. But it is something I've wanted to do for years, and so I need to bite the bullet and just decide, what am I going to do here? Am I just going to buy like a few colours in a similar range so that I can practice doing some colour gradations? do some colour hatchings to get those colours blending, experiment with, you know, using a few strands of this colour, a few strands of that colour. These are the things I have been pondering for years. And as I said, I've got it in writing. I've written it all down thinking, well, this is going to help. If I write it all down, then I'll be able to make a decision about what I want to do. I've got a few different pictures in my mind of what I want to do, but I can't choose one. I have a real thing for little house pictures, houses on hills and houses in meadows. And if you look at Sarah Sweat's work of her little house series, I just love those. There's just something about little plain houses. And also McKay, who is a wet felting artist, she does these beautiful sceneries of English countrysides with little houses, and I just love them. So that's kind of very inspiring for me. But even something relatively simple like a little house is, it kind of scares me. I have done some little houses. This is one of them. Actually, this is from my rigid heddle tapestry class. I love this piece. It's really nice, it's really sweet, and it does say a little bit of what I want to come across in a tapestry, but at the same time it's very simple. And I used a few different yarns with this one, but not good tapestry yarns. I actually think I used some linen in this, as well as some wool, different ones. And there's a little bit of colour changes going on there that adds a little bit of dimension, but not nearly as much as I would want. I do really like this little piece. It's one of my favourite pieces, but there's so much more that I want to do. So get in the comments section down below and tell me that I have to do something with that tapestry loom. I can't have a tapestry loom sitting there for 2 years without a warp on it. That's just wrong. So please encourage me to do something. And if you have advice for the steps you think that I should take, do you think I should just order a few colours of the tapestry yarn? Or do you think I should order a bunch of colours in all really different colour ranges? Do you have advice on what sort of tapestry I should do? Anything. I just need to be encouraged. Please encourage me. The last thing that I wanted to chat about that I've been doing lately is really focusing on my health. So I've been focusing on the food that I eat and the physical exercise that I do. And since the start of the year, I've lost around 7 kilograms, which is, I think it's around 15 pounds. That aspect is going pretty well, because I always feel like when I'm doing as much as I can for my health and when my weight is under control, then other things are much more under control. So I'm not going to talk about that a lot specifically today, but I just wanted to mention it because I've written down a lot of tips and things that I've been doing differently this time, because over my lifetime I have lost, gained weight, gained it more often than lost it. And this time I'm doing things differently. And it's working really well, and it's been about 6 months, and I feel pretty happy with how it's going. And so if you are in a similar situation, if you feel like you're in a little bit of a rut with either your weight or just your health in general, like I was feeling at the start of the year, maybe you would be interested in me sharing a little bit more about that, some tips, things that I'm doing, things that might be encouraging or helpful to you. Again, just let me know in the comments down below if that's something you would be interested in. Friends, I hope you found this video interesting and encouraging, and until next time, happy weaving.